Let's bring in now the Labor Senator for New South Wales, Tony Sheldon. He joins us from Sydney. Great to talk to you again, Tony. You've always been willing to have a chat with us. We didn't hear from many Labor MPs during the election campaign. They must have been sworn off this program. But first up, congratulations to you on your victory.
Thanks very much, Chris, and it's good to see you again this afternoon. It's great to be here, and it's a good opportunity for the country, mate, and the changes that are afoot, and the things that we've got a real opportunity as a community to make some real difference to what is happening on lots of issues in front of us.
Well, let's hope we can continue to get some Labor Party guests, because agree or disagree on various issues, it's important, I think, for us to hear all sides of every argument, and it's also important for Labor to be speaking to all groups of people across the country. Now, just on that, an Assistant Minister for the Republic, is that really necessary? There is no Republic. Is that just a bit of window dressing?
Look, I think it's certainly been an issue that many in the community in the past have taken a deep interest in, and I don't think it's inappropriate for us to be considering what that means into the future. I think this appointment is a good step in having the community to consider, engage about the Republic again and about what's the best way forward. And I think your introduction was fair enough too, Chris, and that is that these sorts of initiatives do take time to be fully ventilated across the community, and it's something that's can be certainly about nation building. It's about giving the country its own perspective about what the future holds. And you see our country now is thankfully and greatly has a wide variety of people from various cultural experiences, and is now the time to make a change. Well, that's something we'll as a group and as a community will make a decision about.
Well, we'll come to some of the other more immediate challenges in a moment, but just looking back on the campaign, especially as someone who's a former union leader, you're deeply embedded in the union roots of the Labor movement and the need to maintain touch, I suppose, the party to maintain touch with workers, with working families. Can you explain why Labor's primary vote went backwards across the nation to one of its lowest performances ever? And what lessons do you draw from the people of Fowler rejecting a blow-in candidate like Kristina Keneally?
Look, I think there's a combination of things. And first of all, I think we really should go to the two-party preferred. We've just now been declared just yesterday, in effect, that there'll be 77 seats for Labor. We'll have a majority government, and there's a very clear mandate to make a difference. But what is also interesting, for example, whether it be the Teal candidates or whether it be the case of Fowler, Di Lee ran a very strong campaign. I mean, she's a very strong candidate. She ran a very strong campaign. She won that election. But what is also extremely important, and there was an endorsement of Labor to take its agenda forward. There's been an endorsement by the community to make sure that that takes place. And it's very clear that being able to govern in the House in our own right won't mean that we're not going to be talking to everybody across the aisle, and including the crossbenchers. Because good government and good democracy means we reach out to everybody. Doesn't mean, as you quite rightly said, Chris, doesn't mean we always agree, but it does mean that we have a damn good discussion about it.
Look, you've got no argument for me. As I said last night, in politics, a win is a win is a win, and you have a mandate to govern, and obviously a mandate for anything you haven't specifically ruled out. And as you say, you'll have 77 seats now. But you must be concerned that working families in various parts of the country are drifting away from Labor when it comes to those first preference votes. Do you think that either major party can aim to sort of reclaim some of that lost ground in the years to come?
Look, Chris, I think you're raising a really important question. This sort of goes to the heart of people's confidence more generally in democracy, but also in those economic pressures that they experience day in and day out. Whether it be the fact in the last 10 years, the middle class in this country, for the first time, has actually shrunk. So you've got that happening. You've got people's lack of confidence on governments delivering for their communities. And that's why this real task ahead for both the government, the crossbenchers, and also the opposition is to start putting the heart back into politics on this cost of living question. It's no longer a simple question. A good economy drives good jobs, for example. it's actually good jobs drive a good economy. But those are the sorts of things that we have to actually be very, very clear on. People have to have confidence in government, and I'm confident that we'll do this in government, that will give good, secure jobs, have a sensible economy where there's a good balance between business, small business, and both large, but also critically the entire community about what they're going to get paid, how they're going to get paid, and that they're going to get a fair day's pay. Now, we've seen in the gig economy, for example, which is now translating into many other sectors of the economy, feminised industries like aged care and NDIS, where people are getting paid below minimum wage, not only poor wages, but even below minimum wage. So we've actually seen, I think that people have lost some confidence in democracy more generally, not before we get to any particular seats. I think that's, there's nuances in every seat, but I think there's a more general question for all of us in politics, and this does go to responsibility of the crossbenchers and all the other political parties in Parliament, that we have to regain the confidence in democracy, because I always think it's a very fragile thing in this country. It's quite a modern thing, democracy. Like the right for women to have a vote, the right for Indigenous First Australians to have a vote is, in relative terms and historical terms, quite young, quite new. Now, we have to bed down and make sure we're representing properly our communities, and there's some good opportunities that come out of what's happened in this last election. Not only the mandate for Labor to take these policies forward, but the opportunity to actually make that difference, people connecting.
Let's pick up with a couple of those economic challenges you mentioned, and now that he's Treasurer, Jim Chalmers is talking up those challenges. Here he is.
There is no point tiptoeing around these serious economic challenges. There's no point mincing words about the sorts of conditions that we have inherited. We've inherited high and rising inflation and rising interest rates. We've inherited falling real wages, and we've inherited $1 trillion in debt with nowhere near enough to show for it.
All right, all of a sudden it's going to be a hell of a lot tougher for Labor to do everything it was talking about, to deliver on the optimistic message it had at the election campaign, even its push for higher wages. Not so dramatic now. Here's Jim Chalmers again.
Minimum wage workers were in many cases the heroes of the pandemic. They shouldn't be going backwards in this cost of living crisis. It's now more important than ever that we get an outcome out of the Fair Work Commission which goes to the fact that people on the lowest wages in this country are facing skyrocketing costs of living, and they shouldn't be falling further and further behind.
Tony Shortram, different perspective there in government, as you'd expect, but the harsh reality hitting home. Can Labor deliver on higher real wages for workers?
Look, I think what was spelled out very clearly leading into the election and for many, many weeks beforehand, and that is that, this, for example, the Secure Jobs Summit we're going to be doing with industry, but also critically commitments about putting secure employment in the heart of the Industrial Relations Act, the Workplace Relations Act. Those sorts of changes make a big difference to making sure people get a proper opportunity to earn a good income. And even such things as pay gender equity is also very fundamentally critical to the imbalance on the wage gap between men and women. And then, of course, the commitment to support increases for the aged care sector. They are real changes and differences that come into place. And I could mention again, of course, in the pay equity question for gender pay equity, having non-disclosure clauses for the more well-paid in communities where surprise, surprise, quite often it's men that are getting paid, and more regularly it's men getting paid substantially higher than women doing the exact same job. Things like same job, same pay, where the labour hire rule, where companies have got people doing the exact same job for the exact same company, working beside somebody who's doing the exact same work at the work site, getting paid less because they work for a labour hire company. I mean, those sorts of things do make important changes to the economy, and of course, there is this, Anthony Albanese has made it very clear, and that is that there is a very strong commitment to the increase of 5.1%, that we have seen wages decline. We've seen wages decline by 2.7% in this last year. We've seen that real people's capacity to look after their families has declined. At the same time, profits have gone up over 21%. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm
Yep.
not complaining about profits going up, mate. Far from it.
No.
I'm a strong supporter of the free market system. But what I do have concern about,
Okay.
and that is that the system's broken because it's actually not working.
Yeah, the challenge is to get those real wages up. That's the point, and that's the commitment, and we shall see. And thanks so much for joining us, Tony.